Hi, it's Brooke here with you today. I said a long time ago on the blog that I would film, or share a tutorial I should say, of making rolled paper flowers. So I figured I would do a video tutorial because I know for me it's a lot easier to see someone doing it. They're really easy to make. They're the flowers that I used on my bridal bouquet and on my wall hanging that's a dream, and various other projects. So today I'm just going to make two so you can see. So I'm just using these 6x6 pieces of paper. It's from an old crate paper, Maggie Holmes line. You can use any size of paper you want. You could make tiny little ones or you can make big ones. So when I make big ones for home decor, etc., I'll sometimes use even a full 12 by 12 sheet of paper, so you can make a really, really big one. Of course, when you make it bigger, it becomes a little bit more difficult to be able to adhere it, like with the glue. But once you get used to it, like I think you have to make at least 5 before you're comfortable with it, because it can be a little bit finicky. So the materials you'll need, whatever size paper you want. It's a good way to use up scraps too, because you can use small pieces of paper from cutting them up. You need scissors. Optional is a pencil. When you first start out, a pencil is a good idea. I don't generally use a pencil anymore. I'm going to use a pencil on the first one and then freehand cut the second one, just so you can see how I do it. And then my adhesive of choice for making these flowers is hot glue. You can use any glue you want, wet glue or double-sided tape, but I find that the easiest one for me is hot glue because it glues it so quickly and I don't have to sit there and wait and hold it for it to dry, and I find it's a little bit more secure than using, say, double-sided tape. So I guess I'll just get started, and I have paper clips here just in case I need to clip something together just to hold it down. But if you're using hot glue, you usually won't need that. If you're using wet glue, like a Tombow adhesive or something, you would have to use a paper clip to clip it together if you didn't want to sit there and hold it. So I'm going to start with this pink paper. So what I generally do is I'll flip over. So these pages, they're one-sided. So generally if you use a scrapbooking paper, you'd have a pattern on both sides. So when you choose which color you want your flower to be, because keep in mind that both sides will show. So you want your pattern that you want to be showing on top when you're rolling it. You'll see that in a little bit. But when I use a pencil, I generally use the side that I don't want to show to use the pencil, just so you can't see the pencil marks after. So you're going to essentially draw a spiral with your pencil. So the way that I start is on the outside. So I make a big circle just like this. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because you're going to cut it anyway, and the wonkier the better, I guess would be the word, because then you have more dimension and more, so you don't want it to be uniform when you're done. So once you have that big circle, just start by going like this. So I generally try to keep the outside a little bit smaller, because that's going to be the center of your flower. And you want it to be a little bit shorter, I would say, than the outside, because you want it to be layered. So again, you don't have to be perfect. I'm getting bigger as we go. And then this is an important part. At the end, you want to leave a circle. So you don't want to keep going until you run out of room. You want to keep a decent sized circle, because that's going to become the base of your flower. And that's important. So it should generally just look like this. This is the pencil technique. So I'll show you. It's going to have to watch me cut for a while. So that's what it looks like, and that's the pattern paper side. So it should just look like this. It should look like a long snake with a circle at the bottom. So now I'll teach you how to roll it. And see how you have this pointy part here. I'm not sure if you can see that. I like to, you don't have to, but I like to cut it about that much just because that little bit, it can be a little bit tricky to roll it, and it really doesn't alter the end appearance of the flower. So now that I have this all ready to go, so like I said before, the side that you want to show, like whichever pattern you want to show, you want to start with that on the top. So when you start rolling, you just want to make a tiny little bend at the end, just like that. And then try to fold it over itself. Don't worry too much about this. Like, it is pretty finicky, but at the end you really can't see it. It's not a big deal because we're gonna alter the shape anyway with our fingers later. So simply like this, just rolling the paper into a circle shape, I guess. And so that's what it looks like in the beginning. And I don't love using the one-sided paper for this because see how you can see all that white? I guess it'll look a little bit different at the end, but I do prefer to use a double-sided paper. So I find the easiest technique is to keep my finger on the flat part because you want the bottom of the flower to be flat. So keeping your finger there and rolling and keeping a finger kind of loosely on top. So when I get to this part, I generally like to switch my hands over. So switch the fingers that were holding the bottom and the top. And while I'm rolling, I try and keep the paper nice and snug together like that, so you can see how close together the spirals are. So when I get to this part, it makes it a little bit easier to keep it in shape, I guess. So you can see when I get to this point, I have the flower on top, and then that little circle at the bottom forms the base, like I said before. So it just kind of looks like that. So what I like to do, you can keep it like this and then adhere it. But for me, it's a little bit too, I guess, tight. So what I do is I keep my finger flat on the base right here and loosely hold the top part and then kind of let it go a little bit, just like that. Not too much. And if you're using a thick paper, it'll generally stay in shape, but you have to be careful if you're using a thin paper because it will just completely spiral out and you'll end up with what you started out at the beginning, just a big spiral flat paper. So that's what it's going to look like, and now we're going to glue it. So this is probably the trickiest part because these things are not hard to make. So I usually will just set it down. I have my hot glue gun all ready to go. It's heated up. I'm using my mini glue gun just because it's a little bit easier with these flowers. You can use a big one too, but I prefer the small one for this particular craft. So you want to find your circle at the bottom, just like that. Just put a bunch of dollops of hot glue right on that circle. And then while it's still hot, you want to make sure you push all the layers down. Make sure you, oops, there's my hot glue gun. Like that. So time is of the essence when you do it because you don't want it to dry while it's, or cool off I should say, before you're ready. And see, silly me, I used too much glue. So now you can see it's coming through the layers in the middle. In hindsight, I probably should have used a little bit less, but if you run into that mistake, you could put a button or a jewel or some sort of embellishment in the middle to cover it, add a little bit more dimension to the middle. So it's pretty much cool enough anyway. And I glued it to my paper. Look, I used so much glue. So there, you can see the middle is glued down, but the outside isn't. You don't want to leave it like that because it's not very secure. I messed up my white paper here. So what you want to do to fix this, I guess, put a little bit of glue along the edges of that circle at the bottom, just like that. Just try not to use as much glue as I'm using, and then just kind of push it down, hold it for a couple seconds just so it stays there. Just like that, and then spin it around. You can do the other side. And do the same with this side. Hold it down just for a couple seconds. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you have a couple layers that aren't quite attached, it's not a big deal because as long as you have the middle and the outside attached, it's not going to move at all. So it's cooled off a little bit. So your bottom will look like that. If you wanted the bottom to look a little bit more uniform, I don't worry about it, but you could cut out a circle and glue it on the bottom. But yeah, so that's what the flower looks like. And you can, I used a 6x6 paper, I said before, and you can tell the size of the flower, and you can make it smaller too if you didn't make it looser before we glued it, but that's what it looks like. So that one's done, and then I have this paper because I was going to show you how to do it without a pencil. So I find it easier to cut on the less pattern side just so you can see your spiral more. So this is how I generally would do it. And so it'll look just like that. And I won't show you how to make another one because it's the exact same technique. But it'll end up looking just like this, and it's just a little bit quicker. Alright, I hope that that explains how to make them. Sorry if you're rambling a little bit. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and I'll try my best to answer them.